And hello, welcome. It has been a while in the Learning Business Central Development from Scratch series. I apologize for that. I think the last one I did was back in August or something. It was months ago. And I apparently had this one prepped. I found my slides for this, but life intervened and yeah, so let's give this a try again. And I apologize. I have a little bit of a cold that my very generous daughter shared with me. So I have some tea here, and we'll see if we can get through this. Now, I did not prepare extensively for this. I kind of know what needs to be done, but I didn't prep everything and have all the files ready. I'm just going to go through the AL for Beginners workbook, just like you would if you're going through chapter 4. Pros and cons. I could prep, make sure everything runs smoothly, but that's going to take me a couple hours to do probably, and that'll just delay the video further. The pro is, as I work through this, I'll probably run into issues and have questions and things that don't make sense or run into some problem, and that may be something that you run into as well. So I'll just be going along in the journey with you, which is what this is about. So audio sounds good, and chat is open on Periscope and YouTube and Twitch. And if you're finding this is a little slow as I go through this, feel free to kick it up to YouTube. I think has different speeds, 1.1, 1.2, whatever. And that can help make this a little faster if you want to go in turbo mode there. So let's take a look at what we're doing today. So this, I previously made a video on chapter 4 part 1, and I broke it up because there's a lot of kind of fundamental content on tables and pages explained in the beginning of chapter 4, and so I went through all of that. No real coding at that point, and now let's just jump into the coding, get the coding done, create the tables, create the pages, and see how that goes, and see if I can get through all of chapter 4, or at least most to the point where you can finish it off. And what is this about? This is based on the Programming in AL for Beginners workbook by Christoph, and you can find him on Twitter at mynavblog. And this Programming in AL for Beginners is a free workbook. It's about a 100-page PDF that you can download. He has posted it on GitHub. Now, this version was released, I think, around November, December 2019. So it's about a little over a year old now, but most of the content should be the same. You may find some small things that have changed, like earlier chapters, BC Container Helper. Freddie has made several changes of that, added enhancements. And you may find something about an extension or a plugin or some aspect of BC has changed. Not surprising in the SaaS world, but most of it should still be relevant. And if you do find something that has changed since the original workbook was published, it's probably a good lesson, because that is how life is going to be in the SaaS world. Blogs, articles, this video even, it's going to become out of date and stale or old, or whatever the word is, because Business Central is moving so rapidly. So just because you find a resource, you may discover that the specific instructions for that blog, video, whatever, do not always apply. You may need to tweak something or do more research or find a newer article. So with that said, let's jump into chapter 4, part 2, and let's start to develop what Christoph calls the bonus extension. And it's called the bonus registration extension. And I probably need to go back and look at the description of this to, I don't yet understand what the bonus registration means. So it talks about you have the opportunity to do this. So I'll take a look and see if I can understand that. So with that, let's write some code. Okay, so let me jump over to screen 4. There we go. So I have a couple things here. I have the workbook open in my browser, the PDF. I have my Visual Studio Code handy, and I also have a BC Docker image, or container, excuse me. So if I do Docker PS on my PowerShell window, I have my container that I call dev17, and just happens, I don't know if it's a good naming convention, but it is the BC version 17.3 in this case. Okay, so with that container ready, let me just pull this up, confirm it works. Yep, looks good, log in. So this is my local BC Docker container ready for development, and we have our workbook. So previously went through the first part of this chapter, so let's scroll down. And I talked about tables and fields, flow fields. Okay, so create bonus setup table, and in some cases there's need to have a setup table for an extension, so to store settings, configuration, etc. Your first task will be create a table. Later we'll create a page for this table. Setup tables have a unique structure. They only store one record, and they have one field as the primary key, which is called primary key and is always blank. Okay. All objects will have prefix MNB, stands for my nav blog, which I now learned. For the workbook, we're going to use 5 object ID numbers 50100 to 50150, which is defined in the app.json file. And if you're going to be publishing this extension to app source, you will need to have Microsoft assign numbers for your range. I don't believe you need Microsoft to assign those numbers if you're just doing a per tenant extension, or PTE as it's sometimes called. And we're going to use snippets. If you're not familiar with snippets, most of them I think begin with T, and so you will type T, for instance, table, tproc, things like that. And important command in VS Code, control space. Took me a while to find that one. So F1 brings down your menu from the top, your commandlet menu, and then control space forces the IntelliSense to kick in, because sometimes it doesn't automatically show up. Okay, so we're going to create a new file called bonus setup table. Now, I previously probably set up a sample project, but I don't know if I have that anymore. Let me just check real quick. My documents, AL, and learning, AL for beginners. Oh, okay. Let's try open with code on that folder. Okay, so interesting. Oops. We have a bonus setup table. Now I notice that I do not have, is starting to build some stuff. I do not have any other files. So let's see if I can do that. I'm going to press F1, and you know what? I thought I turned this on. Screencast mode. And so this is the problem with this screencast mode. I can't tell if it's on or not. Oh, there we go. It is finally on. So there you see my keystrokes. So I'm going to do F1, and I'm going to download symbols. And okay, so I'm just going to start with a new one. There is a technique to create all your project files. Actually, let me just try. There we go. So now there's my launch.json. So download symbols did appear to create that for me, but I don't have an app.json. So let me just start from scratch. It's going swimmingly already. So let me just start from a clean VS Code editor, press F1, choose AL Go. And AL for beginners, chapter 4. Well, let's just go with this. And let's choose a latest target platform. Okay. And I want a local server. My username is admin. I'm using, what's it called? Username, password, user password authentication on my container. And this is just the password. And I'm going to change my server here to dev17. The server instance is just BC. And that all looks tenant default. You now need that if you're using the BC container helper multi-tenant containers, which is default, I believe. If for some reason you're not using the multi-tenant containers, you may not need this. But okay, so now I'm going to press F1 and I'm going to choose download symbols. Always want to do that. And authenticate username, PASS, password. Symbols have been downloaded. Okay, so this is a pretty important step. So now that that is done, finally, let's close this. I don't think we need hello world. So let's delete hello world. And create a new file, bonussetup.table.al. And now, my understanding is that the file naming conventions for AL, or the recommendations, may have changed a little bit. So if you're familiar with those and some of these naming conventions are slightly different, then excuse that discrepancy. Things are changing rapidly. So let's just do new file, bonussetup.oops. Hit enter incorrectly, bonussetup.table.al. Okay, and now we want to use the snippet T table to add a new table and add table number and table name MNB bonus setup. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that. So T table, and you'll notice the snippet appears. Now, depending on which extensions you have installed, if you have the AL language extension, that will show up as T table. But you'll notice there are a few others. There's T-table extension, that's if you're going to extend the table, and then I have Waldo's AL language extension installed, so I have T-table Waldo. And from what I've seen, Waldo's is a little, his snippets are cleaner and simpler, so it doesn't have all the extra stuff that you might need and then have to go clean up. So I tend to use his, but for now, we're just going to use the standard T-table. You just click on it and you notice everything comes in great. And it says add table number and table name. And here in the workbook, let me just zoom in, we see table 50100 M&B bonus setup. So let's do the same thing. So 50100, press tab, and MNB bonus setup. Okay, now data classification is customer content. So you'll notice the AL IntelliSense is usually quite good, and you can, once you get used to it, you can just really start typing a few characters and hit tab or enter, whatever the completion keystroke is, and it really, you start to fly with the data entry or the code entry. Okay, so we have a data classification, we have a caption, bonus setup, and we have fields. And field number 1, primary key. This is quotation marks, primary space key, and this is a code 10. And code's an interesting data type. it's not like a standard, I think that's AL specific. So that is a value. I think it is essentially like a varchar that is to be used internally as a code. And we have caption primary key. So caption equals apostrophe primary key. Oops. Okay. Semicolon. Data classification, customer content. And that wraps up field 1. So that is how difficult it is to create a field. You have a field number, and I need to learn more about the field numbering conventions. If you look at some of the Business Central AL code, you'll see a pattern. It kind of looks like most of them are numbered sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then there are big jumps, like it'll go from 25 to say 100 or things like that. And there are gaps, and looks like that was done with a refactoring or an enhancement or something like that. So it doesn't look like it is a convention to do 10, 20, 30, like in the old basic days of programming where you had line numbers. Okay, so let's move on to field 2. So you can type field and just manually type it out, or you can do T field. And so I'm going to type TF, just press tab, field 2, press tab, bonus, nose, and this is a code 20. Okay, and our caption equals bonus nose, period, semicolon. Okay, data classification. So highly repetitive, as you can see. Table. Oh, interesting. Okay, so now we have bonus numbers and we have a table relation. This is a little different. And my understanding is the way I think of this is like almost like a SQL join or a foreign key reference. It's saying, hey, this bonus numbers is going to come from the number series table. That's how I relate to it. So that's kind of cool. I think it'll be a way to have kind of a lookup and have some validation against the value in there. Okay, so we now have field 1, field 2, and now we get into the keys section of this document. And we only have one primary key, as he mentioned in the description, and that primary key is typically blank. So we have a key, PK, primary key is the name of that, clustered equals true. So that, okay, now we don't have any vars in this case, so I'm going to clear this out. And I think that's the type of stuff that the, if you do T-table Waldo, those snippets, Waldo snippets, get rid of the extra stuff so you don't even have to delete it. If you want it, you can always add it. Okay, so that is our first table. That was pretty easy. Let me scoot this over. Make sure you can, ooh, you might not be, my big head might be in the way. Okay, so I think we're good there. Let me try to make this bigger. Wow, not much room left. Okay, so what is next? Create the bonus header table. And your bonus card will be created from two tables. The first one will be a header where you store the information about the customer status, starting and ending date. In the second table, you'll store information about the granted bonus. Interesting. Okay, so create a new file, bonusheader.table.al. Okay, so I'm going to first create the file, and that was bonusheader.table.al. Let me just copy that. So I right click on my Explorer panel here. And if you don't see the Explorer panel, that's the first button in this, I don't know what you call it, toolbar, sidebar. Right click, new file. Let's call it, ooh, that did not copy well. bonusheader.table.al. New file, bonusheader.table.al. Okay, use a T-table snippet to add table number, table name, M&B bonus header. Okay, 50101. So T-table 50101, and I have very short-term memory today because, okay, so we're going to call that M&B bonus header. So M quote M&B bonus header. If I can type. Okay, and what else does he say? Create a new field number to use type code 20. Remember about properties. This field will be the primary key. Okay, so he talks about the different fields. So let's just jump into the fields we will have. Make that larger. Okay. So I'm going to close this, give myself some new room, and I'm going to click on the File Explorer button to collapse my Explorer pane so you can see that. And what do we have here? We have caption equals bonus, semicolon, data classification, customer content, and our fields are field 1, no period. And this is a code 20. I'm going to turn off my little Karnak thing because it is getting in the way. Okay. Data classification, customer content. Feels like I need a shortcut for that one. And okay, we have caption equals number. Okay, and we have a comment from David Singleton. Hello, David. Field numbers, much like table numbers, have rules based on things such as region. So, for example, fields 10,000 through 10,999 are for US versions of Navision. Okay, so that would be field numbers like table numbers. Code fields are nvarchar limited to uppercase depending on the collation used. In the nav native database, they give better performance, but aren't really a SQL specific feature, have no real purpose on a SQL database. Okay, got it. So yeah, David is explaining some of the history of the numbering conventions and field types, and you know, there's a whole backstory to all this stuff, and we're just kind of inheriting it as new AL developers. So okay, so we have a caption, customer content, field number, and our field number 2. Let's go in here and we get to do TF, T field, and that is number 2, quote, customer no, and that is a code 20. And we have data classification. That's going to get old. I need to figure out a faster way to do that one. Caption equals customer, no period. And we have table relation again. And this time it's a customer table relation, which makes sense. We're saying, hey, we're going to get this customer from the customer number from the customer table. Now I have apparently done something wrong. Field 2, semicolon. Oh, there we go. So learning stuff. So you're seeing these IntelliSense errors, the red squigglies, as I formally call them. And you notice I did not close out the quotation marks on my customer number. And Jeremy Viska notes there are extensions for Visual Studio Code that make table creation about 10 times to 20 times faster. Yes. And you can definitely speed things up, but as newbies here, we're going to kind of go the low-tech slog through this route by typing it. And so Christoph in the workbook notes that, yes, you could just copy and paste this. You could download the code from the GitHub repo. But we're going to go through this and kind of experience what it's like to code this out by hand, just so we get more familiar with it and get familiar with the syntax and the quirks and make these mistakes so we can learn from it. Yes, but to Jeremy's point, there are some awesome extensions in VS Code, and that is one area that I have not properly explored. I've just kind of used the minimum so I can kind of poke around and learn them slowly. About as adventurous as I've gotten has been the Waldo's extension, where instead of the default snippets for like table, as I mentioned, I use like table Waldo, and that I find those a little cleaner and simpler. I have to do less cleanup after the fact, but that assumes I know what I'm doing, which is always a dangerous assumption. So yes, Jeremy has a great IKEA reference from his recent adventures with IKEA, uh, which I empathize with. Anyone who's assembled IKEA furniture, you know the challenge. Okay, so after customer number, we got that. So we're going to do a new field. So let's do T field. And just for comparison, let's try T field Waldo here. Okay, and I noticed that there's some quotation marks there. That's kind of nice. And there's already a caption there. So that's kind of handy. Let's save a little time and do that. So this is starting date, and this is a date. And next we have, oh, it jumped over the caption. Okay. So the oh, no, it automatically did the caption. Clever. So like I'm used to .NET development, and the IntelliSense is fairly good, but this, at least with VS Code, I don't know if it's full Visual Studio versus VS Code, or if it's .NET versus C# versus AL, but the IntelliSense is pretty awesome from my experience. So you can really jam when you're typing along here. Okay, so we have customer content starting date, and now we are on, let's do T field Waldo, and let's do field 4. This is ending. Ah, look at that. As I type the, oh, can you see me? Let me scroll down. As I type the field name up here, the caption is automatically updating. Super cool. So now I'm going to hit tab, and this is the ending date. And only thing I need to update is customer content. Okay, so now we have 4 fields. Pretty simple. And we're essentially creating a table. I'm used to doing this in, say, SQL Server Management Studio. But here we do it in code in the AL world. So it's a bit of a new thing for me, but that's cool. Okay, so now I don't see a key yet. There we go. There's our key. And our primary key is number period, and clustered equals true. So we do actually have a primary key here. Oh, okay. So Jeremy says that if he recalls correctly, field numbers can be defaulted to the next available with IntelliSense. Just delete it and control space. Let's try that. So if we were to come in here and do T field Waldo, and I'm going to do control space, delete, control space. Look at that. Pretty nifty. So you delete the ID, the letter's ID, and then you hit control space. That kicks in an IntelliSense, which is clever enough to know that, oh, you must want field 5. I press tab. Very cool. Thank you. Nice. So with all these IntelliSense features and extensions, you can really just jam. And I think I'm guessing, like, I need to look back now that I'm thinking about this, look back at an Eric Hugard video or someone else doing coding and watch and see how quickly things can go with all of the IntelliSense features cranked up. So we just created a second table. And Jeremy points out that can also work with object numbers. So for instance, and I think I have tried that. So let's just pretend to do a new file, test.al and table Waldo, and I'll delete my ID, and there you go. Control space brings up 50102. And you notice, okay, so let's do that. Okay, so anyway, that's pretty cool. So that'll automatically grab the next number, I think, for that object. Let's delete my test AL. Okay, so, and David Singleton mentions Seaside. I know not of what you're speaking. Never heard of it. So that is the development environment that shall not be named, right? I am, if you don't know, I only focusing on Business Central SaaS, AL, all the new stuff. I'm not attempting to jump into any of the history. The history certainly informs the present and the future of these tools, but for my own sanity, I need to contain my scope. So now we're going to create a new file, bonus status enum al, and I'm assuming this is an enum. So let me just close this, do a little cleanup here, and create a new file, bonus status enum, use snippet tenum, add number, name, mnb bonus status, mnb bonus status, new file. Okay, new file, bonus status.enum.al. Did I get that right? Yep. And one other thing that I have seen, so I'm just creating this in the root of my project directory. One thing I've noticed is that the pros appear to do this. So we're going to take a small divergence. I'm going to create a new folder called SRC. That seems to be the convention. And I am going to drag my AL files into that SRC folder. Now, this is a highly simplified version. There's also discussion on whether you organize your code into folders, your AL files into folders based on the object and what it does. And I haven't dug into that, but for now, we're going to just pretend we know what we're doing and get fancy and just get into the idea that you may have your AL files in a subfolder within your project. You won't necessarily have them in your root project directory. So just to let you know, that is allowed, and you may have organizational schemes. So let's take a look at our bonus status enum, and we're going to use the tenum, and let's go with the Waldo since that seems to be my preference. And enum, and look at that. I delete ID, control space, as Jeremy pointed out, 50100. It knows this is my first enum, and this is MNB bonus status, and extensible is true. And I need to learn more about this. This was brought up during the Beer just last Friday, January 15th, 2021. And it was discussed that if you're developing app source extensions, you should make them extensible. And I'm wondering if this extensible equals true keyword is related to that. I don't know, but something else I need to look into in terms of extensibility. And value, we have a value 0. And this is going to be open. And let me scroll this up. Caption equals open, and then t value, look at that, there is snippets for everything. Oh, it doesn't work on values. So yeah, value ID, I delete it, control space, no suggestions. So we're going to go with 1 here, and that may be because we don't want different different values, but let's call this one released. Oh. So one thing I just am not used to, in AL, there's no apostrophes, quotations, there's apostrophes, and then there's quotations. And I know there's a rule for that, but here you see this is quotation marks, this is apostrophes. These don't have those. So I'm learning. So I'm just not used to it yet. And this is released. Okay. So Jeremy says for smaller extensions, I tend to just do /source/base extends and /source/_module. And let me see if this shows up. So this is my little chat window, and Jeremy's saying source base extends, source module. Those two hold everything but any main setup or install objects. As far as making things extensible, that also includes throwing events and using handled patterns. It's just not you, Steve. The syntax is messy and inconsistent. Okay, good. I mean, all languages have inconsistencies. All applications do. And, it's just someone decided something arbitrarily on a Thursday afternoon, and they, it sticks, and decades later, here we are. Okay, so for now, so Jeremy's saying source base extends, source_module. I'm going to have to learn more about this subfolder convention, but for now, I'm going to pretend I'm being fancy with just src. So we have completed our enum code, and we have open and released. Very cool. So now we're going to do a bonus header table. Oh, open file. Okay. Open file, bonus header table. And what are we doing with this? Add new field status. Okay, field 5. Oops. Let me do things right. T, field Waldo, and field 5. This is status, enum, MNB, bonus status. So I did a control space there, and it says, oh, I notice you have this enum. Would you like to use it? Great. I'll just press tab. Super cool, super fast. Already has my caption in there from the Waldo T-Fields Waldo snippet, and I just need to do customer content. So we now created our table. We went off on a side journey, created our enum, defined that enum, 01 open, open released, and now we went back to our header table and added the status enum reference there. So that is good. And good morning, evening, Avinash. Thank you for joining me. And especially on a Saturday, gosh. Okay, so we are cranking along. We now have our bonus header table. We've created an enum. We have our bonus setup table, and we're moving right along. This is on page 36 now. So now let's, I'm gonna have to zoom this out a little bit, but page 37, create bonus line table. Okay, and as you're seeing, these are fairly easy to create because we're just kind of following Christoph's directions. And it's not rocket science, the coding here. It's 90% IntelliSense and snippets, and 10% following the directions. Now, if you are creating your own custom tables, obviously that's a different idea or different project, different challenge, because you want to design that, right? And while Business Central and AR are pretty forgiving, like any development, your data structure and your data model and your data design and those relationships, that's pretty important. It's fundamental. It's foundational to your application. So you don't want to create a table and then say, oops, I want to delete this field, add these 5 fields, delete this one, change this data type. AL, just like anything else, you can do it, but it's not ideal. So we have the opportunity of just being able to type this because Christoph has already kind of worked through this and designed this for us. So here we go. create bonus line table. So oh, okay. So before we create a bonus line, we have a bonus type, enum. Okay, cool. So yes, and Jeremy notes, regarding your table design, just delete this field is also tricky in SAS. Yes, I've messed around with this in a just playing around, and there is an option if you're going to delete stuff. I think it's called data synchronization in your configuration file for your project. You can push table structure changes, including removing fields, but it is not something you want to do in a production environment. You can do it in dev and sandbox, that's fine. But just like anything, you don't want to have massive schema changes in your database tables with a released product. So get that out of your system, ideally in design, but definitely during development and QA pre-release, get your schema settled. And that can be hard, understandably. Okay, so let's create our bonus type enum. I'm going to create right click on my source file here because I just want to create that new file here. And it is bonus type dot, oh, come on, I'm accidentally hitting enter, .enum.al. Okay, and we can do our tenum Waldo, and I'm going to delete ID, hit Control Enter, press Tab, and you'll notice Visual Studio Code, that screencast, it just stops working. That's why I tried to use Karnak, but Karnak requires more configuration. So I'm going to try it again. There we go. See, it starts working again. It'll just stop, unfortunately. Okay, so there's my enum, and this is going to be MNB bonus type is the name of this enum. Extensible equals true. And we have some values here. First value is all items, and the caption shall be all items. And we didn't use a snippet for that value, but this new value we're going to do tenum value Waldo. Okay, and this is value 1 item. Oh, okay, so it's a pretty simple one. Caption item. Okay, so you'll notice IntelliSense, lots of IntelliSense, a little bit of typing, and boom, you're done. So that was our bonus type enum. Let me just close this, do a little housekeeping here. Next up, create a new file, bonus line table AL. I'm going to right click on SRC, new file, bonus line.table.al, and table Waldo, and delete, control space, and let's see if we get the same number. Yep, that's working reliably. 50102, and quotes MNB bonus line. And I forgot to mention, he does mention this prefix in the Christoph mentions MNB for my nav blog, and that is your prefix or affix or suffix as it's called, and that is your abbreviation or your company initials that would be assigned by Microsoft when you register with them as an AppSource developer. They will give you this 3-letter code, and this is on my to-do list. I need to do that for a couple companies and get my special code. For now, we will continue to use Christoph's MyNav blog affix. And MNB bonus line, data classification is customer content. And we have our fields. Field 1 is document number. So I'm just going to jump right in there. Document no period. This is also different for me. Those of us from the Dynamics GP world, we're used to the term ID. Or if it is a number, it will be NUM. Having numbers abbreviated as no or NO period it's an adjustment for us coming from the Dynamics GP world. I'm not a fan of it just because number is NUM, NUMBER. So why change the abbreviation to NO? But it's not something that's going to change in the BC world. So, side note, Jeremy makes a very interesting point. And I think I've heard this as well. So part of the reason why these prefixes or affixes or suffixes exist is along with these object IDs is to avoid collisions. So I'm sure there's lots of backstory to it, but when you have multiple extensions in Business Central, the system is having to kind of add those things, and they may pile up. So you may have multiple extensions on the same table or the same page. And so it needs to have to deal with that and say, okay, wait, you have an extension, you have an extension. I don't want them both called bonus line table or table extension. So I need you to differentiate them a little. So in order to make things unique, they have this system of affixes or prefixes and IDs. And Jeremy is noting that there is a rumor we may get proper name spacing at some point instead of the prefix system with the short object name. So I have heard that rumor as well as a possible way of solving this and other challenges in the per tenant extension and the app source world. So if you're familiar with .NET, we have namespaces like I could do, my company dot my solution dot object dot cs or something like that, and that might produce a file like my company my solution object dot dll, and that gives me a namespace. So if Acme Co has similar my solution.object.dll, I can differentiate those two within my code. Even though it's my solution object, I have the namespace to help me differentiate that and navigate those objects. And so we do that a little differently, obviously, in AL, and namespaces in concept from the .NET world, that sounds appealing to me, but I'm sure there are lots of complications. So okay, so there's lots of history in this app, in this development world. So Jeremy notes that the number concept comes from the Nordic language translation. They use like object underscore number, NUMMER, as the term for things that are uniquely identified. Since Navision is Danish or in origin, it's NO period and not ID. Yeah, okay, so interesting. Lots of backstory to all of this stuff. Do not assume that this is all, clean field development and just arbitrary decisions. So we are stuck with NO period. But, okay, cranking along. Field number 2. Sorry, I need to get used to the snippets. T field Waldo. And I'm going to do field number 2. And this is, a type. Okay. And this is enum, tab, control space, mn. What am I doing wrong? Okay. Field 2, type. Now there's quotation marks around that. I don't know if that's right, but let's just give this a try. So let's try this again. Enum space, control tab, MNB. There we go. Don't know why it wasn't working previously. MNB bonus type. And we have a caption of type already. Data classification, customer content. Okay. And so Jeremy Viska and David Singleton, longtime Nav BC developers, and they're offering history in the comments here. So when the first official English language version of Navision came out in 1992, we complained then about number, but no one listened even back then. Yes. So in the English world and certainly in the US, NO period, I don't recall seeing that much. I don't think that's a convention that would be common in development, but what do I know? Okay, so we just did type. Where is that? Field 2. Okay, there's our M&B bonus type. And field 3. Okay, moving along. T, field W. Wonder if there's a faster way for me to get to the Waldo extensions. Let's try this. TFW. TFI. Nope. TFIW. Oh, that's an if Waldo. FIEW. Okay, that's a weird one, but TFIEW, and it's smart enough to know, oh, you want a W in there as well, T field Waldo. Okay, so if you're really hankering for your Waldo snippets, you just throw in a W there. And we are on to field 3, and this is the item no period, and this is a code 20, which I believe is 20 for our German developers. And we have data classification, customer content, and we have something different here. We do have a table relation, which we saw before, but on field 3, as you can see here, this table relation is an if statement. So table relation equals if type equals filter item. Okay, so what we are apparently doing is, based on this item number, we have a table relation with a filter, and we're going to filter based on that item. I'll have to read that about 12 times for it to sink in, but I'm guessing that's like a SQL join with an on statement, essentially. We're essentially kind of joining that item table based on the item number on this field. And so Jeremy says, I believe Waldo's extension has a setting to disable the default AL snippets to make the list shorter easier. Requires restarting VSC. Ooh. Okay, so dear audience, if you have some patience, let's take a look at our extensions. This might be a good side track. Click on your extensions button here in the sidebar, and let's find Waldo. There is Waldo CRS language extension, which I have installed. And you can click on this little gear icon here. And let's take a look at extension settings. And VS Code extensions have a gazillion settings, as does VS Code itself, like just incomprehensible number of settings. You can do just about everything. So, oh, look at that. Sets the subfolder name where objects will be placed. So SRC. Cool. Okay. I didn't know about that. Exclude app names. Don't know what this stuff is. Remove prefix. Disable the AL snippets that come with this extension. Disable default AL snippets. Okay, let's try that. This is totally optional, but and he notes you need to restart VS Code twice. So I'm going to check this box. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to save my page. Now, a trick I learned, and let's see if this works, is rather than having to close and restart VS Code, you press F1 and you say window? Reload window. Not intuitive, but reload window. And my understanding is that effectively restarts VS Code. And I'm going to wait for this to... Snippets have been successfully disabled. Now we need to do F1 developer reload window one more time to enable the snippets, I think. Okay. Now, we did that. That was kind of our side journey, and we're getting a couple errors, which I didn't notice before. A field list has to contain at least one field. Okay. Bonus line table. Okay. Oh, that might be down here. My field. Okay, got it. So, so Jeremy notes on that option to have files automatically go in SRC. You have to have the folder move option, and you have to enable the CRS on save action to reorganize also, which is a CRS language extension, cloud ready software. That's a different extension. So there are lots of extensions. I'm not yet, and I haven't yet delved into them. So for now, I'm just going to crank through this to try and get done because my throat is dying on me. Okay, so let's get back to work. We were on field 3. Item number code. I think we were good there. Let's do field number 4. Let's see if this works. T field. Okay, so we see T field code Waldo. We got to go down here for T field Waldo. Field 4 shows up with IntelliSense. Bonus perk. And integer. Data classification. Customer content. And min value. Okay, this is new. Min value is 0. Cool. Integer properties. Max value equals 100, which makes sense because this is a percentage and it is an integer, so we can now control min and max values, 0, 100. And one cool thing about AL is this is done in the table definition. So in the table definition, when you define your fields, you can have properties on your fields which effectively serve as validation code. In my .NET world, boy, it's a lot of work to define you got to script out your table in SQL, then you have to have all this application code for validation, whether that's in your data access layer or in your application layer, to ensure your data has integrity is a lot of work. So this functionality is just like super cool. It's like the what do they call it? I don't even know what it's called in .NET. But when you're using the object relational managers that handle your data access layer, they can do that. But I never really got into that. So yeah, Jeremy notes AL field properties save you hundreds of hours easily. So powerful. I totally agree. Like, I'm the 80 to 90% of my work in the .NET world is just plumbing. It is just routine plumbing. Data access, data validation, error prevention, just all this stuff that's housekeeping stuff. It's not even related to the core application functionality, but you have to code it. And it is super tedious, super time consuming, so easy to get wrong or miss something. Being able to add min and max at the field level, just incredible. Really, really cool functionality that languages like AAL have built in, and just it doesn't exist in the C# world, really. It's not fundamentally there. There are frameworks for doing it, but you need to use those additional frameworks. It's not native. So we got to field 4. And now we're down to our keys. Let me clean up a few blank lines. We have our keys. We have a PK called document number, and this is our bonus line table. So we have a PK for document number, and then we have, oh, this is different. So we have a composite key, I think is the term. We have document number, comma, type, comma, item number. So that's 3 fields for our primary key on the bonus line table. We have our document number, we have our type, and item number. Cool. So that's a little different. Okay. Oh, excuse me. So we are now on page 39, cranking along. So on pages, users interact with data. So this is our UI layer. And the users can modify, insert, modify, or delete data. Additionally, they can run custom actions. A page in the AL language contains page properties, controls, actions, variables, and triggers. So there can be a lot going on a page. Different types of pages. And I'm going to skip through this. You can read through this. It's super important to understand your types of pages and the kind of containers and objects you can have on a page. He referenced some of those here, and there's more complete documentation on the MS Docs site for AL. Highly recommend you read that, and that is also covered by several BC AL development books. Because certain combinations of objects go on a certain types of pages. So you'll kind of want to understand that. And I've read through it several times. I haven't been able to memorize it, but list page, very common, very simple. We have a card page like your customer, your item, your vendor. Those are cards. And you have a document page, which is for, say, header and lines on a transaction, for instance. And document pages created when there should be a header and line. That sounds like our tables. And in practice, it's usually created using two separate pages. Sorry, the cold is kicking in here. First one with type document, where data from the header table is presented. The second one presents the lines, is created with a list part. Then such page is added to the document page as a part. So you create a list part and you add it to your main document page. So that's what you see here with this sales order. We have our main document page and we have our list part for our lines. And even Jeremy, who's worked with NAV and BC for eternity, 20 some years, I think, even he has not memorized all the page types. And I suspect you use a handful of page types 90% of the time, and these others are less frequently used. But you also have the things off to the side, like your info pane, or I forget what this thing on the right is called already. So page properties, you have all sorts of properties. I won't dig into that like I did with tables. It'll take forever. Page controls, a fact box. That's what that thing on this right side is called, is your fact box. I always forget that. Okay. Page controls, fast tabs. So fast tabs are these collapsible areas, like here, general, address, content, invoicing. And, okay. Actions are grouped into areas, page triggers, open page, close plays, move focus. So definitely read through these. I'm just skipping through so we can just handle the code and get through chapter 4. So we're on page 43 with page triggers. It is not common to, okay, this is an important point, which I've read elsewhere. It is not common to put code in triggers directly related to insert, modify, or delete the data on the page. So you don't put that trigger code typically on the page UI level. You typically put them down at the table level where it handles the data validation and integrity piece. I have read that several times. That is very different from my .NET world. It is not often to put the captions on the page. If you put a caption on the table, then that bubbles up to the page. So that is another convention. It is good practice to assign an image to an action. Okay. You can see how the image looks directly in Visual Studio Code. Okay. It is possible to add code to fields on the page as well. There are triggers on validate and on lookup, but it is more common to put that code directly on the table. Important if you're coming from another language, another platform, another development tool. There's a lot more code at the table and field level for your validation, your triggers, your actions on data, and less so at the page level in AL. Okay. So Jeremy is mentioning fact boxes and fast tabs. Yes, clever naming of the Business Central AL world. Okay, so let's create the bonus setup page. Action images. Oh, so Jeremy's explaining the images, action images from the built-in image library. I haven't explored that yet, so I am learning that. We'll need to see what that looks like. Okay. And okay, so let's create our bonus setup page. Let me shrink this down. And over here, let's see, can we see this? Let me close this, make sure my big head isn't in the way. This. Okay, so we're going to create a new file, bonussetup.page.al. And how crazy is it on a Saturday? People are watching this live stream. I appreciate it, but it's a wild world. Never thought I'd be doing this. Okay, so let's close our bonus line table. Bonus setup page. Right click. New file. Bonus setup.page.al. Oops. So I did not capitalize page. Let's try that. Okay. Shrink this down, hide my file explorer, and this will be M&B bonus setup using tpage Waldo, and I'm going to delete this 50100 M&B bonus setup page, and I think the screencast already turned off. Oh, maybe because I restarted. Okay, so we have caption, usage property, application area. So let's just look right at the code. Page type, card, application area, all, usage category, administration, source table is M&B bonus setup. We do have a caption. This is going to be bonus setup. And we're going to add some properties. So delete allowed, false. Insert allowed, false. This is our bonus setup table. So it makes sense. We do not want to allow users to insert or delete. We should only have one record in the underlying bonus setup table. So this bonus setup page should not allow inserts or deletes. We should just have one record there. And layout, area content, group. Okay, so we're going to have a page group called numbering. And our caption is numbering. And our field is bonus nose period, semicolon, bonus nose period. Okay, now you'll notice I have a yellow squiggly under the bonus numbers, and it says use of implicit with will be removed in the future. And so this is a change that came out recently with AL and Business Central. I don't know if it's 16 dot, but definitely in the 17 dot. You need to qualify these field references explicitly with rec. Now, there is an extension feature that will automatically retrofit that for you, but for now, we're going to be simple and just type rec, meaning we're referring to a record on this page, record.bonusnumbers. So Jeremy notes there's a good way to view the BC Action image library. There's a Nav 2018 overview. Search for Dynamic Nav Image Library for AJ Kaufman's tool. So if you're interested in learning more about the Business Central Image Action Image Library, Dynamic Nav Image Library, and it looks like AJ Kaufman may have done a blog post or something around that. Okay, so we have our field, bonus numbers, application area all. This is on our page level, our page field. Tool tip specifies number series. I'm going to do a little English editing here that will be used for bonus numbers period, semicolon. Okay, so that is a field we just added to the page. And we have a bunch of close braces here. And now we have actions here by default. Okay, so it looks like we're going to go off on a little tangent to learn. So I'm just going to delete that extra stuff at the bottom of my page. And we just have a basic MNB bonus setup page here with one field. Now, basic methods. I'm assuming these are on the page. When you write code, you will need to do operations on the records. So 4 of the first methods that you may work with are reset, init, insert, and get. Okay, so Jeremy's saying these actions are often removed for setup pages, just like I did. Okay, so that was good. So on the setup page, you don't have the actions because we are not inserting or updating records on the setup page. Reset method is used to remove all filters. Init is writing a new record to the database. And insert is insert. You can use on insert trigger. Method get is to get record values from the database using the primary key fields. Okay, so these appear to be not necessarily related to our setup page. So we have if-else statement, very common in the programming world. Obviously, if evaluation and else. Okay, so sample code, if A is greater than B, then begin end. If and not, then message. Okay. On open page trigger. So your bonus setup page at this moment does not allow users to insert or delete the record, as I mentioned. This is why you need to put some code in the on trigger on open page. So if the record is not found, so let's say it's the user's first time opening this setup page, if there's no setup record, we need to create that. But we're not allowing users to insert records from that page. So how do we set up our setup record for the very first time? So we will use the on open page trigger to initialize our record. Okay, and as he's mentioned before, in setup tables, there's only one record in the setup table, and the primary key is always empty. Therefore, you do not need to put a value in the brackets in the method get. Okay. So let's give that a try. Let's go to our bonus setup page AL, add a new trigger on open page. So we are on our bonus setup page AL. We're going to add a new trigger near the bottom. Ooh, that's kind of annoying. T trigger Waldo on what? On open page. Begin. Reset. Okay, so reset clears all our filters. Now you notice we have an implicit with here. So let's just be good and try rec.reset. Let's see if that does it. Cool. Okay, rec.reset. If not yet, so if we're unable to get a record from our table, and we're getting the implicit with, let's just leave that for 1 second. Then begin. Okay. Init, insert. So that is crazy compact. I'm not having to do an explicit insert in the table and list all the fields. That's fascinating. So the init initializes a record in a table. Wow. So you notice I'm getting these warnings, implicit with. So same with the get even. So let's see, control space. No, control period. Okay, so in Visual Studio, and also apparently in Visual Studio Code, when you have a warning like this, you'll see a light bulb over on the left. And it says show fixes, press Control period. It's a super cool feature. So when you get the squiggly and you're like, well, either you don't know what to do or you do know and you just want it to do it for you, press Control period. And it will propose some fixes for this. Qualify with rec only get or rec all occurrences in this object. Let's see what happens. All occurrences. Look at that. Now, I don't know if that's a standard fix or if that is from the extension AL Code Actions. I think that might be AL Code Actions by David Feldhoff. Incredible set of extensions available. So if you're not seeing the code fixes there when you do Control period, install AL Code Actions by David Feldhoff and buy that man some coffee by clicking that button there and becoming a supporter. Okay, so let's jump back to our code. Okay, so Jeremy says, note that the get means you're looking for an empty string PK. Setup tables typically only have one record with a blank PK for this easy trick. So, yep, so I think that, oh, I see. That's what he means. So up here, in the setup tables, there's only one record and the value of primary key is empty. Therefore, you do not need to put any value in the brackets. And by that, I think he means what we call parentheses. So in method get, so we're doing an empty get here, saying, hey, get us the record with no primary key. Because normally, I'm assuming you would have a primary key there. So get empty parentheses, get your setup record. If nothing was retrieved, then initialize and insert. Cool. Okay. Yep. Okay. So David Singleton says, let me just type it out. So get empty parentheses is similar to get blank string. So essentially an empty primary key. Cool. We are learning as we go. Thank you, commentators. Okay, now you'll see down here, interesting, pragma implicit with restore. Pragma, I need to look into this. That was a term that I've mentioned I only recently learned. It's been around forever apparently, but pragmas, yes. Anyway, don't want to get sidetracked. So we just did our open page trigger on our bonus setup page. Because we're not allowing inserts and deletes, how do we initialize our setup record for the very first time to make sure it's there? And we create an on open page trigger that will run the first time this page is opened. It will say, okay, let's reset our record filters. Let's see if we can get a record from this setup table. And we're not specifying a primary key, because this is a setup table that should be blank. If we don't get a record, let's initialize one and insert one. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. That would take a lot of code in the .NET world. Okay, if you want to see the effect of your code and how the bonus setup looks like, you can publish your code running Control F5. Yes, we can, but let's give that a try. I don't think this will work, and I'll explain why. So Jeremy says, I love watching folks learn the basics. We take so much for granted, and it brings back the wonder and power we wield in BCAL. Yes. I know nothing about this. So for me, this stuff is like magic and black magic and voodoo. It's like, wait a minute. In 4 lines, including the if and end, I'm able to magically initialize a setup record? Are you kidding me? The amount of code and thought and care and tedium I would have to do in the old school SQL and .NET world to do this properly. Maybe I was just doing it all wrong for a decade plus, but holy bananas, that would have taken a fair amount of work. I would have had to have an insert. I would have had to think about, okay, what field values are valid in this table? How do I I'd have to write code for all of that stuff. It is just tons and tons of code for really basic plumbing. So this is magical. Let me tell you, it's pretty awesome. Done. Okay, so in just a few minutes, we created tables, we created a page, we initialized records in just a few lines. Okay, so let's try Control F5. And I don't think it's going to work the way we think, but I'll show you why. So I'm going to hold down Control, press F5. Because we have already downloaded symbols into this project, so F1 download symbols, it's going to launch our page. I'm going to log in. And that is also a setting. The auto launch page is part of our project. Now, it took us to a customer list, and we're like, this is what I'm talking about. Yes, we did Control F5. Yes, it published, but it opened the browser based on this to this customer page. So why? Okay, so let's jump back into our files here. And if we look at our launch.json file, so under VS Code launch.json, you will see that we have startup object ID 22. And that is the customer list page. And so we are telling this VS Code project, when I publish with debug launch browser true, so it's going to open the browser page to go to our tenant, our Docker container, and it's going to start up on object page 22. Well, we don't want 22, so we want the bonus setup page. Well, the ID of that is 50100. So let's see if this works. Instead of 22, let's specify 50100. That is a page, so that should still work. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to just close this browser tab. Close this one as well. Control F5 to publish without debugging. And voila. So that is a little hack that when you're developing against one specific thing and when you publish, you want to see that thing, specify that page number in your launch.json. So, okay, so now we're going to close that. So now we have the bonus setup page. Now this is the first time I have run this. So in theory, my on-page trigger should have done something. Created a record. Bonus numbers. Look at that. It is referencing number series, which, if you recall, was a table relation that we had in the bonus setup table. If I'm not mistaken, there is our table relation for number series. Now, I'm not going to spoil the fun and jump ahead, but that is why we see this drop down. And again, this is magical. At the table level, in our field, we just said, hey, link to this table called number series. That's it. One line of code in the table field definition. And on our page, without us having to do anything, we go to our page and we have this field called bonus numbers. All we said was bonus numbers. We didn't tell it what this field was, where it came from. It just magically knows, oh, you must be referring to this bonus number field in your bonus number table, and you have UI. Like, this is just, let's just pause. I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, maybe other people coming from other languages, this is like routine for you. But from my world, the amount of code I'd have to write to wire up this drop down to appear on a web page, holy cow, it just makes me tired thinking about it because there's no value. I'm not adding value when I'm doing that code. I just want a drop down that lets a user choose a number series. And this just magically happens because I wrote one line of code that says, oh, yeah, by the way, link this field to the number series and make it a lookup. I don't have to do the dropdown. I don't have to do the lookup. I don't have to do the referential integrity between these two tables. Just absolutely magical. Okay, so back to our launch. Jason, Jeremy says, note that when you run page to setup page, it'll open in non-editable mode. Oh, okay, cool. So that's good to know. That's why the by default, this dropdown was read-only which is perfectly fine. It's a setup page. It was read only, and I had to click the little pencil icon to switch over to edit mode and get the drop down. That link also auto handles cascade, modify, delete, renames. So I don't know what Jeremy refers to there. That link. Okay. I think he's referring to the table relation link. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy. But so, yes. Side note that it is crazy that Business Central allows you to rename and modify primary key values. Like from my Dynamics GP world, that's not supportive natively in the application. You can do it on the back end via SQL or third-party tools. There's nothing magical about that. It just has to go find all the tables where that ID is referenced and rename them. BC does that auto-magically. It is absolutely nuts. Cool. So let's go back to our PDF. And we basically, as noted, if you want to see the effect of your code and how bonus setup looks like, you can publish your code running Control F5. Let's just pause for a moment and take a look at this. So let's press F1 in VS Code. And if I type publish, so we have publish with debugging F5, publish without debugging Control F5. Now, so far, I don't need to debug when I'm coding. So I typically do Control F5, publish without debugging, and that makes sure your VS Code is not connected to a live session and you don't have to stop the debugger. So that's what I typically do now is Control F5 just to avoid that step. If you need debugging, by all means do it. Jeremy says, with table relation, if your setup contained s-ord, someone later renames, s-ord to sales order, your setup table will hold sales order. Got it. So if I go into my bonus setup table and I choose, let's just employee, for instance. Right now, EMP is stored in my bonus setup table, presumably. So Jeremy's saying that if this ID, this number series gets renamed to employee, because I have this table relation here, ALBC will automatically update this value in my setup table just to maintain the referential integrity. Totally awesome. Okay. Now I'm going to not save that for now. Okay, so I'm starting to fade, starting to get tired. Let's see if we can get through this. I don't have page numbers on my printout, so hopefully we can get through this. So we created did we create our list page yet? Bonus page list, I don't think so. Okay. So Jeremy says, rather than modifying your launch.json run object, Waldo CRS extension lets you publish and run current object. Okay, so let's just see what happens. Bonus setup. Look at that. Run current object. Okay, so I'll have to find, look at that. That runs the object as the table. So let's do publish. Look at that. So F1, I type publish, and you'll see the prefix CRS in the drop-down menu, publish and run current object. That's a great tip. Thank you, Jeremy. So that's my bonus setup table, but I want to publish my bonus setup page, F1, and publish CRS, publish and run current object. So it publishes and runs. Awesome. Look at this. This is super cool. So extensions are mind-blowingly powerful in the AL world and VS Code world. Okay, so let's keep cranking. Let's create a new bonus list page AL. So I'm going to right-click on SRC, new file, bonus list.page.al, and there's my bonus list page. Use snippet tpage. So we're going to do tpage Waldo. ID 50101, MNB bonus list is the name of that. What happened? Let me scoot this over a little. Close this. Close this. Okay. Choose add page property caption. Okay, so I'm just going to jump down here, and we have our caption is bonuses. Page type is not a card, it is a list. Application area all. Usage category, lists, okay. Source table, MNB. Oh, interesting. Let's try this again. I'm trying to get IntelliSense to work. MNB bonus header. So it did not want me to have quotation marks there in order to kick in the IntelliSense. So if I press tab, the IntelliSense adds the quotation marks. So a little bit of, eccentricities to this. And we're going to do editable equals false for our bonus list. Oh, got it. I have a double quote there. Thank you. Okay, so I think we have 6 lines here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's jump into our layout. Now, this starts with area content, but Christoph has us using a repeater control, probably because it's a list page. So repeater control 1, I think is what that says. Let me zoom in. Yeah. Okay, repeater control 1. We do not have an area. We just have fields since this is a list page. So let's try this. Open braces. And let's do T field. Okay. I'm just going to stop fighting the snippets. T field Waldo. And now, okay, this is a mistake I make constantly. So let me put this out. When I just did T field or T field Waldo, that creates a table field. But we are editing a page. We want a page field. That is a different snippet. I do this all the time. And I'm like, why does it have ID when over here this is field no? So I guarantee you're going to do that because it happens to me all the time. I forget. I need a T page field Waldo or T page field. And I'm sure he mentions this up here. Maybe he does not. Use T page snippet. But on the page field snippet, I guarantee you're going to make the mistake because I do it all the time and I just stare at the code for 5 seconds like, what am I doing wrong? Okay, so Jeremy is noting, I prefer to name my repeaters. Okay, that's what that is. Control 1 is the name of the repeater. Is common from the snippets. Naming them makes it more obvious to page extends objects, part of making it extensible. So this is a name that is apparently exposed as part of this repeater object on this page. So control 1 is just an arbitrary or default repeater name. Okay. Note your repeater should be within the area content. Thank you very much. I deleted area content. So let me add that back. Area content. Okay, so now I'm going to open the curly braces. Open the curly braces. Release the code. Repeater control 1. So let's get the correct snippet here. T page field Waldo tab. And you'll notice this is different. It's my field and field source. That's the difference between a page field versus a table field. Now I think I can get away with just clearing what's in there, doing IntelliSense, typing the field number, hitting tab, and it does both the field reference and the field name caption. And you'll notice here that we get the underlined squigglies. I'm going to do control period, qualify with rec. Now, I could wait to the end and qualify them all at once, but okay. And he says the content the area content is left side of the page as opposed to the area fact box is right. Okay. Oops. Cone tent. Ethan Cohn, the Cohn brothers. Okay. Oh, I'm getting tired already. I'm drinking tea. Maybe I should have had coffee instead. Okay, so let's see if we can get through this. I'm going to try to plow through it. I am fading. Tool tip equals specifies the bonus number period. Okay. Field customer. Oh, okay. Again, forgot to use the snippet. You can just type it out, but T page field Waldo, and I want to do customer number. Boom, much faster. And now I believe it is I don't know if it's a requirement, but a strong recommendation to do tool tips on everything. And I think there is also a tooltip ML. And this gets in the conversation of translations and translation files. So if you're doing a multilingual application, you will want to have the tooltips and make sure that you can support the multi-language. I haven't gotten into that, obviously. So customer number specifies the customer number, obviously. Okay, and we're going to do T page field Waldo and starting date. And I'm just going to cheat. And this reminds me of the help that we all hate, right? Enter, and the field name is, code ID. And you look at help and it says, enter the code ID. And you're like, what's the code ID? I don't know. So anyway, enters this. I'm sure everyone has seen those on websites and applications. Specifies a starting date and ending date. Okay, so T page field ending date. And you see how fast this is going. Specifies the ending. Much of this is very routine stuff. It's repetitive. And then lastly, we have a field status T page field Waldo and status. Okay, application area all. Tooltip specifies the bonus status. Okay, now, as I mentioned, we have all these yellow squigglies. I corrected the first one, but I'm going to click here, control period. You can qualify this one or qualify all occurrences object. Boom, done. Thank you, David Feldhoff. I need to buy you another coffee. Okay. And great. I believe the tooltip is required by AppSource. That makes sense. I think tooltip ML is the old way and is not allowed on AppSource. Okay. I wasn't sure about that. So tooltip is apparently the new one, and I don't know why they called it tooltip ML, but maybe that, I'm sure there's history behind there. Okay, so we are on page, 48 now, 47 we just did, 48. Now we have an actions down here. So let me just clean up my blank lines. Let's go to our actions. Area, instead of processing, let's do area navigation. We'll see what that means. Action is customer card. Application area all. Caption. I don't know what any of this does yet, but let's see. Customer card. Oh, image. This is our action image that Jeremy was referring to. Image equals customer. Promoted equals true. Promoted category process. I think that has to do with the search. Run object. Page. Oh, let's see if we can do this. Page, control period, customer card. So whenever you can use IntelliSense, kick it in. So whenever I see these like quotation marks that are referring to an object, I just delete it and try control period. and then run page link equals number equals field customer number. So that was all control period to get that stuff to appear. And run page link. Tooltip opens customer card. Got it. So this is an action on the list page that lets us presumably drill into and get to our customer cards, because that is a related table. Okay. On action, we don't have a trigger, so I'm going to delete this. Okay. Are bathroom breaks allowed in live streams? Because I'm reaching that point. How long has this been going on? 101 minutes ago. Oh my gosh. Do we need intermission? Should I think I may break. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this and end the stream, and then I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to resume on page 48 here to continue on the bonus card page, because no one should have to sit through my videos more than 100 minutes. That is just, I think there is some, moral obligation to give you guys a break. So with that, we are on chapter 4 still. Like I said, this is a long one. This is part 2, coding the tables and pages. So I'm going to resume this with a subsequent one. We'll do a part 3, as it were. And thank you very much for joining. So Jeremy, closing thoughts. AL Object Wizard is a very fast way to construct a page. So, okay, so yep, part of an extension, AL Object Wizard, you can do a page that way. But for now, we're going to go old school, so we have to push out the code and add multiple fields in the light bulb. Okay, got it. Add multiple fields from the light bulb. So we can look into that. Run object as a way to do actions without the code. Okay. You should not use both run object and trigger on action. Okay, so I deleted the trigger on action. Okay, so there's clearly a lot of depth in here, and this is just a simple demo, so we're glossing over a lot of this stuff. But I'm going to wrap up now at the 103-minute mark. Ouch, I am so sorry. But yeah, this has taken a while. But good commentary. Thank you all for the input, Jeremy and David, and thanks everyone for joining. And I don't know if I'll continue today. I think I need to rest and nurse my cold, but we will continue on with a part 3. So as you can see, this isn't hard, but there are some things to learn, creating these files, using VS Code, creating snippets, using extensions, utilizing all the tools, and trying to understand the context and background here. The syntax is pretty straightforward, fortunately, though. So with that, have a great day, and I will see you in part 3 coming sometime soon, perhaps tomorrow. Okay, talk to you later. How do I get out of here?